Okay, up next, a beautiful Jackson Bell. Another beautiful cabinet here. I love how the veneer was put on here at these 90 or 45 degree angles. And it's going to really, I think, clean up nice. Maybe a refinish, but you got all these different colors here in the wood, and that makes it beautiful. That grill cloth looks suspect. You can see the orange color. Maybe that's original, maybe not. I'll try to find some other examples. The dial scale, very, very colorful. I love that. I'll do some picture-in-picture here, some still photos, and show you guys that. But it's got a hole in it over here on this side. We'll see if we can patch that up, or maybe I'll just scan it and try to reproduce the dial scale. Dial pointers seen better days, but definitely the radio has some potential. So again, it's a Jackson Bell. I think it's a West Coast radio. Should make for a interesting project sometime down the road. Oh, one other thing on this one too. You can see some nails here. There's a piece of wood decor that connects between these 2 points, and it's missing. So I'll have to actually look at some photos of some other restorations that have been done, and just reproduce this piece that ties in across here in front of the speaker grill area. You guys were just watching my intro on this Jackson Bell receiver that I put together and posted 5 years ago. How time flies by. Anyway, a little more research. I identified the radio as a Jackson Bell. It has the Jackson Bell name, but this radio was actually put together by Pacific Radio Corporation. They were also a West Coast independent radio manufacturer back in LA in the 1930s. It seems, after Jackson Bell went out of business around 1935 or so, after getting permission to use the Jackson Bell name again, Pacific Radio created this particular radio cabinet and chassis itself. And this came to market around 1937. And the design most likely was done around 1936. This particular receiver, when it hit the marketplace, all metal tubes. And you can see we don't have all metal tubes in here as found today. The little tag here is missing, but there's another example. This is probably going to come back to model 556 or a chassis 55. There's no schematic, but there's close schematics that I can use for the tube complement to do any additional troubleshooting should the need arise. It's a 3-band covering the broadcast, what was referred to as the police and the shortwave. I'll expand more on that when we get to that point. Anyway, a cool receiver. Let me get this thing out of the cabinet. Let's look underneath for the first time together and see what kind of condition this thing is in. So the old backer board here, assuming original, in the cabinet itself, and a dial lamp, number 46, left behind. Let me set this off to the side. We'll look at the chassis here closer. Most likely you can't make this out. I'll do a close-up. It's a Pepco power transformer. There's the trademark. I think I had the same thing in my other West Coast radio. I think some research took this back to Potomac Electric Power Company. That's definitely not a definite. And then there was another Pepco company incorporated. They were out of Costa Mesa, California. So that's another possibility. You can see your typical dust, dirt. Been in here for a number of years, and I've had it in storage as well around the field coil and the output transformer. Let's get this antenna lead and the line cord that's been replaced at some point in time removed. What's left of the plug itself, not much. And a little close up here of the tag on the back of the receiver. You know, when I saw that 833, I thought that was the model number, but again, some additional research and another example shows to differ. And your typical tuning condenser for the period. Looks like we got a few hairs down in there in between the plates, so we'll definitely take that out, and some mold and or mildew that's formed in there. And we've got the coils here off to the side. They look to be in good condition. We'll test those. And the one dial light that fell out, located here. Very little rust on the chassis itself. I think this will clean up without a lot of effort. And the anticipated look underneath the chassis itself looks pretty clean. You can definitely see a lot of these caps have been replaced at some point during the life of this receiver. We've got a mix here of different type capacitors. You can see the electrolytics that have been tacked in here. And we've got a mix of some paper and wax capacitors. The old dog bone resistors look pretty original. Alright guys, I'm going to leave off here. I'm going to do a little cleaning and scrubbing on the chassis itself off camera. Just clean up some of the crud. Get this thing mounted in my chassis stand. And we'll pick up here getting the tubes out of the sockets. Kind of draw a schematic along the way of what we find and kind of compare that to an existing schematic of a receiver that uses the same tube complement. And let me go ahead and get this bent dial pointer off before I break it, and then place the screw back in there so I don't lose it. Bending the little ears back just enough to get the dial out without doing any additional damage. It's a beautiful dial indeed. Less the damage over there by the 600 kilocycles or kilohertz. I think I know what happened. Let's look at the placement of the dial and see how that damage actually occurred. Looking at the placement of the dial, it appears the dial lamp itself, the heat from the dial lamp created that issue. Burnt through the plastic or the material that the dial itself is made from. Quite interesting. It appears to be clearing the dial. We'll look at that closer later. And protecting the loudspeaker before I poke a finger or screwdriver through it. Not to say I still won't damage it, but better this way than no protection at all. Just a quick test here with the audio output power tube pulled 6F6. I place my tube adapter in there, and I'm coming off of pins 3 and 4 on the socket adapter, and that would be the plate in grid number 2. And that directly couples back or attaches to the primary of the output transformer. Just generating a signal around 500-600 hertz. You guys can hear that even though we have an electrodynamic loudspeaker. I can still pass an audio signal through, so it's a good indication. Again, we have no open primary winding and or voice coil. Still don't know about the field coil itself. I'll still take time to document the DC resistance. Maybe help others that have a similar model in the future should they have a problem. With the tubes removed, I'll go ahead and take time to finish wiping this down. May have misspoke earlier when I said the chassis didn't have much rust on it. Looks like underneath the crud and dust, we do have some surface rust that I'll need to work on as well. Again, not uncommon for a radio that dates back to this period. You always want to place your tubes somewhere safe, so I think this baggie will work out great. Repurposed. You can see my wife's notes there. 6 flour tortillas back from May 15th of this year. Okay, I think I've done all the cleaning I can do at this point without kind of taking this thing apart. So let me start dissecting the